Good to see you, Malcolm.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm feeling a lot more energized now because I just stretched and talked to myself and realized where my excitement was, where my energy was,
Mm,
and how important our kind of whether we feel lively and enlivened or
mm,
whether we feel half dead and walking around like walking corpses, and an
mm,
awful lot of people do feel drained, dead, disconsolate, overwhelmed, sad,
mm,
despairing, and this is a terrible, terrible state of affairs.
mm.
And it needs to be addressed. And whole intelligence has a lot to offer in terms of enlivening and
Mm.
offering something new and fresh and vital that we all desperately need.
Yes, and do you know what the funny thing is? I can see the difference between when we were speaking 15 minutes ago and you now. You know, there's a difference in your face.
Yeah,
There's more light, you know.
yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah.
mm,
So I got in
fascinating.
touch with what was exciting me rather than what was feeling burdensome.
Yeah. Yeah, and, you know, it's interesting. I'm just thinking about, what we might cover today, and I have been thinking a lot lately about how you know how the younger generations might take advantage of whole intelligence. Because the whole intelligence is so,
Absolutely.
so it's such a flexible, applicable way of thinking about what it is to be human. Which I think also brings with it some challenges because it can be anything to anyone, in a way. And yet, if we start to focus some attention on, I think in our conversation today, maybe focus some attention or at least start from that perspective, maybe it will make sense. We can unpack whole intelligence from starting from there and see where it goes. How does that sound?
Yes, yes. I mean, I've been reading this magnificent book by um, a guy I've known for a long time, but only distantly, Guy Claxton,
Mm-hmm.
and he's written a book called Intelligence in the Flesh. And what his essence is very much the same message as we're doing in our work on whole intelligence, is that the old ideas about intelligence, somehow that it's to do with the brain and being brainy or being intellectual, and it's measured by your intelligence quotient, which is based on puzzle solving at speed. Um, and the puzzles are pencil and paper objects and things, and you had to sort them into categories and whatever. That all of this idea that that's somehow intelligence is so, so wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It's antiquated. It's based on a view that somehow the intellect can be isolated and that rationality is all to do with being able to conceptualize. And it ignores the huge number of ways in which people are intelligent through their life experience, through their uses that they make of their bodies, their manipulative skills, their creativity, their humanity. There is so many ways in which people can act intelligently, which is what whole intelligence is about. People acting intelligently and
Mm-hmm.
having intelligent conversations in government and moving into groups and uh, cutting through the piles of verbiage and inauthentic conversations that there are, and jargon bound and depressing and over organized, and rather than the freshness and the vitality and the of humanity. And
Mm-hmm.
that's, I mean, when you talk about young people, they've got, in a sense, their natural stage of development is that they're at their liveliest. They're at
Mm-hmm.
their most productive and most vital and charged up with energy and excitement and whatever. And what kind of world are we presenting to them?
Mm.
What kind of world? So either they have to be very academic. I think you said your daughter was in a university, but not somehow it's not speaking to her in some way.
Yes, yeah, yeah. I think she's in college, and it's what we're noticing is that she's working as well, and actually she gets loads from work. She enjoys the interpersonal with the people she's working with. You know, she's getting recognition, and then she goes to college, and it's like you can almost sense the energy shift,
Yeah.
and and so I wonder how if she was fluent in whole intelligence, in the practice of whole intelligence, how that might inform what
Yeah.
she does, with herself and what she does in the world. I mean, maybe that's something I should do, actually. I should talk to her about that. Just thinking about it on the hoof. But, it's because it
Yeah.
may well provide some insights,
Yeah.
and help her to go down a path that is appropriate for her, rather than, like you said, the sort of traditional uh, you know, follow the academic path because that's the way
Yes.
to have success.
Yes. And so many people, I mean, this is another sort of point about the bias towards this kind of intellect-based view of intelligence, is that lots and lots of people go around thinking of themselves as unintelligent because they didn't pass exams or
Mm-hmm.
they didn't get promoted on skill based or whatever. And this is, again, it's a depressive view
Mm-hmm.
because there are hundreds of ways in which people are already whole intelligent if they grasp what they already do in terms of relationally, in their sensitivity to context and field, if they are embodied, if they are in touch with their bodies and their creative impulses
Mm-hmm.
and their capacity to get on with people and their what they've learned from experience through teaching, through whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
whatever they do, there are things that they can do, and that's part of their intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to acknowledge this general based intelligence,
Mm-hmm.
commonsensical, grounded, realistic, rather than a view of intelligence as somehow isolated brain power.
Mm-hmm.
When in fact, all of our systems and this book is full of marvelous quotes, but it's like he's proposing a view of the human body
Mm-hmm.
as um, a mass of seething, streaming collection of interconnected communication systems that bind muscles, stomach, heart, senses, and brain so tightly together that no part, especially the brain, can be seen as functionally separate from or senior to any other part.
Mm-hmm.
It's like thinking is actually about as much. It's not about being able to solve puzzles at speed in an isolated way,
Mm-hmm.
working against the clock. It's about deciding and acting and it, engaging with the world and engaging with other people and acting sensibly and with authority and kindness and good values. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that's what goes into all of those things that go into people acting intelligently,
Mm-hmm.
which is what matters.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And we need to act intelligently in groups, in organizations, in management circles and teams and cabinets, you know,
Mm-hmm.
all round this. And this is why proposing whole intelligence as a vehicle for talking about this is kind of everyday wisdom,
Mm-hmm.
usable ways of thinking and acting in the world that make sense and which can be inspirational
Mm-hmm.
and which
Yes.
we desperately need. Sorry, I'm going to
No.
stop now so you can give you some time.
No, not at all. No, I'm just thinking. I'm just thinking. So, how would that play out then? So my daughter or even my son, how might they, if they became fluent in whole intelligence, how might it change things for them?
Well, we changed them massively. I
Mm.
mean, because each of the explorations, and there are five, as we know, there are five explorations, each of them is a field of inquiry and research into the actual process of being alive as a human being at this point in time. So it's like each one is a, I mean, like, let's take any one of them. You pick one, pick any of them.
Well, I think, well, you started talking about embodiment, and I think
Yeah.
that's a really interesting.
Yeah. Well, embodying is incredibly important because it's the most neglected in our culture for exactly the same reasons that we already mentioned. It's like because the isolation somehow, the thinking competence and ability to function sensibly and to understand the world, etc. It depends on your IQ or some rubbish. And it isn't. It's based upon how much people can integrate with their lives and how much they're in touch with themselves as physical beings, as life, as life in action. Life as it's plants and animals and human beings are part of that.
Yes.
The great joy of being alive, the facts of being alive.
Yes.
So, I mean, there are hundreds of ways in which people get to be more embodied. It may be through sport or athletics, or but that a lot of that is becomes other factors come in there that take one away from just consciousness of oneself as a physical being. That is included by certainly if you're going to be an advanced athlete in any form, you have to be really in touch with every aspect of your body and health and whatever. But an awful lot of people who are not super athletic can nevertheless be very embodied, including people who are disabled and have sensory or physical limitations. They can still be very embodied because it's about noticing such things as one felt sense. What is the feeling of your being in the moment? And if you attend to that, you attend to your breath and your posture and to where you're holding tension in your body, where you're relaxed, where there's an energy flow, or where you feel half dead or desensitized. And it's like just simply body awareness begins the process of becoming more embodied. Then there are things like Tai Chi, yoga, and other approaches that really focus on bringing very close attention to our movements, breathing, how erect we are, how relaxed we are, or are we all kind of, yes, sort of, which is destroying of embodying, destroying of being fully in one's body.
Yes.
So, as it were, one feature of becoming more intelligent in the sense we're talking about, more able to engage with the world intelligently and creatively, includes being present in one's body rather than just being desensitized and going on robot-like, charging up the street without any attention to what you're feeling and sensing and experiencing. Sorry, over
no,
to
it's all. I'm busting in there. No, it was just I was just thinking. What it was helping me appreciate is that in many ways it's empowering, isn't it? So I think about my daughter. Rather than, not suggesting she is, but I can imagine rather than being at the mercy of social media, for example, comparison with other people, about body and all this sort of stuff. Actually, it's like really tuning into what's going on for me, what's going on inside me, how am I, and which relates then to how do I want to respond to the situation rather than things being done to me. I'm then because I've more embodied and I'm tuning into myself, I'm then able, I've got more agency to be able to respond in a different way, and relate to people differently and reflect on what's important to me, and then maybe experiment, do things differently.
Yeah, they're all of the explorations kind of come together. The more you
Mm,
go into them, the more you realize that they are just perspectives on something which is whole, our whole
mm,
intelligence. One of the things that often afflicts young people in particular, I think, in some ways, is there are enormous pressures
mm,
from society, social media, etc., to be a certain shape or to dress in a particular way or to look a particular way. And often people feel that they are um, ugly or that they've got something that they don't like about themselves physically.
mm.
And that's part of, in a sense, self-recognizing that one is more than the shape of your bum or whatever. You
Yes.
know, it's like
Mm,
these are, it doesn't matter. So
mm,
much doesn't matter in the ultimate business of being alive and having a good life.
mm.
So it's like it's a deep respect. We need a deep respect for our bodies and not hate them because
Mm.
they're not conforming to some standard which is usually ridiculous.
No, that's so profound, though, Malcolm. I mean, a friend of mine that I worked with in Help for Heroes, he often said, um, comparison is the thief of all joy. And I really get that. And also, if it starts to turn you against yourself, against your body,
Sure,
or that's
sure.
such a
Yeah,
awful experience. I
yeah.
could imagine from.
I mean, I have with, um, I remember groups in the past that I worked with, quite largish groups, and I get people to think about their bodies, and there is absolutely 95% of the people are thinking that their body is not right in some way because it's their breasts are too big or too small, or their legs are ugly, or their ears stick out too much, or whatever,
Mm,
as if this is somehow terrible,
mm,
and it
mm,
it does feel terrible for a lot of
mm.
people because
Yeah.
they feel shame or embarrassment or whatever.
Mm.
But I mean, everybody feels like this, 95% of people.
Mm,
Very few people feel, oh, I've got the most gorgeous body. And yet, actually, we are living miracles. Just
mm,
through being alive, we are incredible, miraculous processes.
mm,
I'm feel that very, very strongly.
mm.
It's amazing to be alive at 83 and
Yes.
and still functioning more or less most of the time.
Yeah,
But
absolutely. Yeah.
so, I mean, that's embodying, and it's an adventure.
Mm,
It's an exploration. It's not something that you either are or you aren't. Oh, you're embodied. Okay, tick,
mm, mm.
or or must do better. It's not that at all.
No.
It's about an inquiry process, which is goes to the heart of being a human being.
Yeah. Yes. And I think also you mentioned Tai Chi, and I do a bit of Qigong,
Absolutely.
and it's like, that but I think what the risk with those things is that you're only embodied when you're doing those things, and actually
Yes.
it's a permanent state that you can tap
Yes.
into or not. And
Yes,
then and then and then
or repetitiously come back to,
mm,
probably, rather than permanent state, because
yes,
again,
okay.
a permanent state is too static. We're moving, we're changing all the time,
Mm,
and that's part of what the um, the intellect-based view of intelligence ignores, the fact that we're constantly moving.
yes.
As young children know this, they're constantly moving, and the notion that they've got to sit still at a desk in rows, this. I mean, that's probably not the case now, but in Victorian times it certainly was, and
Mm,
even in when I was at school,
mhm.
the notion of sitting quietly and hands folded,
Mm.
and all this,
Very mechanistic, isn't it?
completely mechanistic and
Mm,
authoritarian and oppressive.
mm,
So anyway, that's one thing that is an exciting area, but
mm,
all the others are relevant too. I
mhm.
mean, in interrelating, I mean, young people are constantly and experimenting. So let's take experimenting and interrelating together, because they often are the case. They're doing that. They're meeting people. They're engaging. They're learning how to be with other people, and and again, kinds of with embodying. It's like, do they feel authentic? Do they feel this is a person that I feel comfortable with, and I'm just going to be myself with, or do they feel that they need to put on an act in order to somehow gain the respect of the others, and so on? So again, that falls into the category of something that could be in the way. And so that in a sense, you could think of it as an interruption to flow. Because if we flow and then we're natural and we just do what we feel like doing, we get with a sense of confidence that we're all right and that the world is going to treat us well. That's a whole good cycle, a cycle that's very productive usually for people. Equally, if you feel wrong, or you're not good enough, or that people are going to reject you, that can easily turn into a negative sort of cycle.
Yes.
We
You may
depress
start.
ourselves.
Yes, and you may start looking for evidence of that rather than positive. And what I noticed in there, Malcolm, you talked about embodying, interrelating, and experimenting. Those three things at play, and also what was I was thinking about was also self-recognizing. In the moment when
Absolutely.
if you're becoming fluent in whole intelligence, so you suddenly are sort of recognizing how you're feeling about the situation in the relationship, and then how you choose to respond, which is another part of it. It really is. It is. I mean, it's such a such an active framework for life in many ways. That,
yes. I mean, we live in a world which is so fragmented and distracting and superficial, and we're being bombarded by commercial messages, and there's strong social pressures, technologically backed up. All of this. It can be a living hell for people to try and stay sane in this crazy, overwhelmingly complex and troubled world. And I think returning to these 5 dimensions of whole intelligence, it's only one system, and it's not designed as a panacea for everything, but it sort of lies between realms that at one level are political. I mean, they relate to decision making and power questions, and our values of what we value in life and what's important, and spiritual work, which is obviously very much about fundamental values, beliefs, behaviors, whatever, that take you in, as it were, inward into one's being, one's soulfulness, one's spirit, and how that emerges in your behavior with others and responses to others. So it's a huge area. The spiritual disciplines have been around for hundreds, if not thousands of years, and they're full of wisdom and so on. And then there's the area of politics, which is changing and which is about battles and people fighting for their points of view and not respecting the other people and all of that. The politics is a war continued, without shooting. It's a reversal of the usual thing that people say, that war is a continuation of politics by other means, but it works the other way around too. And that is also economically, socially, whatever, it's a very important area, and asking fundamental questions about humanity. It's neither of these areas, but it's a third area, which is about attending to our personal being, to, if you like, it's a more psychological approach, but it's not an inward psychological self perpetuating loop of self-analysis or anything like that. It's much more about really owning who one is and how we need other people, and we don't exist individually in isolation. We're always connected, and we are always having to deal with new situations which are arising in the flow of life continuously. And we're making decisions, and we're using all of our life experience up to that point to do things to the best of our abilities. And then the other ones fit in, that we respond to situations, we're connected to other people, we are in touch with our bodies, we are checking with ourselves, so that we're allowing some time for reflection, for being quiet, just noticing how we are, what we're doing, and making choices from a more gentler, more quieter sort of place, where we tune into who we really are and what we really want in life, and what we want to leave behind us when we go. And all the time we're all experimenting, because we're meeting fresh situations. Each moment is a new moment, and we can do things that we never did before. So we're always pushing against the barriers of habit and excessive reliance on routines and whatever. And they're very useful and very powerful and necessary, but we also need to refresh ourselves and revitalize ourselves to capture some of that excitement.
Yeah, it feels.
I keep on feeling I'm ranting on and not giving you space.
Not at all. It feels very wise. Feels like a sort of wise, a wise way of being, as a human.
Arguably, that's a good way of trying to. It's like making wisdom rather than some kind of heavily making it, wisdom, heavy, sort of strong, and it's not like that. It's much more about staying alive and doing the best that we can with what we've got.
Yeah, no, I really get that, Malcolm. Good.
Shall we stop there, or is it?
I think so. Yeah, I think we've explored a lot there, a lot to unpack, but also stuff that we can work on in the future. You mentioned other things that I think we could use as lenses.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So, thank you, Malcolm.
All right,
great as always.
Yeah, good fun. All the best to you, Darren.
See you again soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.